they would be interested in alchemy, because alchemy is the study of the chemistry of life. And so obviously they're far advanced than we are, and we are heavily involved, as you know, as a doctor, we're heavily involved in the study of chemicals and the chemistry of life. Well, I'm sure, as you said, we're way behind other civilizations that have been looking at this life and chemistry a long time before we have, and they probably have mastered this whole idea of how life is chemically produced and where it comes from. So I think that's the alchemy that these alien civilizations are looking at, the whole structure of life and how the chemicals of life impact each other. So I would say in conclusion to that thought, that the idea of turning base metal into gold, I think, was a metaphor for turning base knowledge, the base man, just normal humans and normal human understanding, but applying brilliance and spiritual understanding to it turns our world of base knowledge into gold, into something profoundly important the deeper you go. So I think turning into gold of base metals was, from my understanding, a metaphor.
Well, that's very interesting. The other thing he mentioned, that he considers the fact that there may have been a natural disaster that occurred in space with a collision of the planet and a destruction of what was Earth. And this created the asteroid belt, and what we have now is Earth. So maybe mating the two ideas of the planet was laid to waste, it was a waste and a void.
That's it.
Might be the answer.
Yeah, it became a waste and a desolation. So obviously at one time it must have been an incredible place, this planet, and then something happened where it became tohu vavohu. It became a waste and a desolation. Well, if our planet collided with another planet, that would cause a total destruction and a waste and desolation of a beautiful planet, and then give it millions of years or whatever, eventually after the dust settles down, so to speak, and life begins to re-establish itself, we come up with today's world, the Earth as we know it today.
And we also know that ice core studies and deep core studies done on the mantle show us that this Earth one time, the atmospheric pressure may have been 4 to 5 times higher than what it is today.
So that would be interesting, because what does that imply for life forms on the Earth today?
A total different life form other than would be acceptable for our kind of mankind. Certainly would give credence to the prehistoric creatures that were here, before man was here.
That's right. I've often wondered about the dinosaurs. Why is it that we don't have them today? Well, it may be due to the gravitational force field of the Earth would not allow such large animals to exist today. There's just an awful lot of questions that have not been asked by scientists on things that we know existed. We're just not addressing them.
But we could be, talking here about the same thing, that the tohu vavohu may have been this disaster that occurred. Maybe the dinosaurs were creatures who, some of them survived after the disaster, what was left, but because of the changes in the planet, everyone is looking for a reason of devastation that occurred, like a meteorite slamming into Earth, the creation of a crater which it made life impossible for. But maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was the original event that happened, such as the planetary collision, which changed what was left of the planet so drastically that it blew off part of the atmosphere, like it did on Mars, because we know what happened on Mars.
Right.
And so the dinosaurs died out in a very short order.
Very possible. And one other point that I remember talking with you many years ago when I was doing a radio show, and you were my guest on the show, and I asked you, according to religious philosophies in the Christianity especially, that believes that all animal life and all life on the earth it reproduces in its own kind. Dogs only reproduce dogs. They don't produce cats, right? And so only cats can produce cats. But I ask you, is it possible that there can be a crossbreeding between totally different kinds of animals? Is that possible scientifically, that something might come from two complete separate species and creating a new? And is that scientifically possible?
Been there, done that. It was, I believe, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, that the tobacco industry, in order to increase the production of tobacco, crossed the genes of a firefly with the genes of a certain kind of expensive tobacco plant. Why? So that the leaves would grow at night and the pickers could pick the tobacco 24 hours a day. Done way, way, way back, and it's being done today. When you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and get your chicken, are you eating chicken? Or are you eating something that's a cross between something and something else?
That's what I've heard.
And if you don't do it synthetically, Jordan, look at the people who grow orchids, strawberries. They didn't actually do gene splicing. They just knew that they wanted this kind of a fruit mixed with that kind of a fruit, and they bred them. Two different kinds of organisms put together. So now, with the extent of genetics the way it is, now you can actually take the DNA from something foreign and put it into the DNA of something else. You've created a new creature.
The implications of that are staggering, because I know, as well as you do, that anytime science gets a hold of something like that, there's going to be all kinds of political talk about, well, we don't want to do things like that and disturb the natural flow of life and everything, and governments are against it. But you know as well as I do, they've been doing this for a long time, experimenting on crossbreeding animals, crossbreeding plants, we know, like you said, but even possibly crossbreeding the humans with other civilizations. I'm wondering if that is not, in point of fact, something that may be happening.
I think that, you know, going way back into mythology, where you see these mythical figures of a horse, you know,
half man,
half horse,
right.
Where you see these gargoyles,
yeah.
where you see cats that are part cat and part something
Absolutely.
else. You see, I think the science itself is not evil, but I think that the ability to do these things in the hands of the wrong kind of people makes it evil. So perhaps when Enki came here with the Anunnaki, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
They knew what they wanted. They were probably doggone sure that the experiment would go right, so that they could produce something that was useful to their needs. And that's probably where we came from. Now look at human traits. You know, look at what you needed at that time to make a tough guy. To go into a mine, you know, even with modern technology they needed long enough so that you could get a certain amount of gold out, you know, to take it and do what you wanted. You got to be a tough guy, you know.
Yeah.
So all those traits that there was probably purposely bred into the human were there. And then when the mining stopped and the Anunnaki left the leftovers of what was here and decided to leave mankind here to their own devices, which was probably not such a good idea.
Yeah, obviously.
But the traits remain, and so we went ahead and we continued to breed, and so those traits are been carried through, you know, through the 14th, 15th, 16th, 19th, 20th century, the same traits. So again, if you're truly interested in the little fawns that you made, maybe again, you see, going back, goes full circle, back to alien abduction. Now they're here maybe to get rid of some of those traits. And we talked before about the Tower of Babel.
Yep.
You know, they built the tower to get closer to God, but God wasn't happy. So what did God do?
You confuse the languages.
Confuse the languages so they couldn't communicate.
That's right.
Which begs the question, how did they communicate before God confused the language?
Yeah.
So maybe we communicated telepathically,
Telepathically.
and our punishment was maybe not an hour, a day, a week, a month, 10 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years, because there's no timeline in that literature, is there?
No, not at all.
So the confusion of the language was they took away our telepathic abilities and made us use our vocal cords.
Yes. And that slowed down everything. Because now you don't have, because with telepathy, you would have understanding, everyone would be able to quickly understand things together. But now it's one person talking to another person, and now you're getting all kind of confusion.
That's in the conscious aspect of human existence. But still, you know, we admit to two kinds of minds, the consciousness and the subconsciousness.
Right.
Maybe the subconsciousness is still the key that goes into the universal consciousness, where it's true that everybody knows. You know, you know, talk about the 100 monkey theory.
Exactly.
You know, maybe that's what causes that to occur. Or I invent a pair of slippers like yours, and at the same time, a guy 10,000 miles away invents the same slipper. The idiot savant, who doesn't have the mental capabilities or capacity to sit there and feed himself, and yet will sit down at a piano and play magical, specific music just absolutely with perfection. Absolutely. Where does that come from?
You're right.